Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular board meeting of the Winnipeg School Division Board of Trustees for Monday, January 17th, 2022. Before we begin tonight's meeting, I would like to remind everyone to turn off their cell phones and any electronic devices they may have. I would also like to state that this school board meeting is taking place on Treaty 1 land and the homeland of the Métis Nation. Mr. Cochin, please proceed with roll call.
Roll call for the regular board meeting of Winnipeg School Division for January 17th, 2022. Trustee Adele.
Here.
Trustee Reed.
Here.
Trustee Murdoch. Trustee Dumont.
Here.
Trustee Shetkowski.
Here.
Trustee Chen.
Yeah.
Trustee Broughton.
I'm here as well.
Thank you. Approval of agenda. Moved by Trustee Broughton, seconded by Trustee Reed, that the agenda be approved. Are there any additions? Seeing none, can I get all those in favor of the agenda? Any opposed? Carried. Delegations. Patrick Allard. I would like to call upon Mr. Allard to begin his presentation to the board regarding COVID protocols. In accordance with Procedural Bylaw 1263, Section 32.8, you shall be granted 10 minutes to make your presentation. Please proceed, Mr. Allard. Is Mr. Allard here, Brenda? Brenda, do you know if Mr. Allard is at the meeting? Okay, well, we'll move on to the second delegation, and maybe Mr. Allard will be able to join us in a while. I would like to call upon Mr. Ethan Brinkman to begin his presentation to the board regarding mental health on virtual learning. In accordance with Procedural Bylaw 1263, Section 32.8, you shall be granted 10 minutes to make your presentation to the board. Mr. Brinkman, are you here to present?
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yes, I am. Would you like my camera on?
That would be nice if we could all see each other.
Certainly. Okay. I would like to start by making a distinction between optional virtual school and virtual school measures that they force upon the schools. And this is totally focused on forced virtual school. Though the studies I do cite do not differentiate, I believe in the choice of how schooling is done by participation rather than by dictation. The focus of the studies are on Ontario, as they had the strictest virtual learning measures of any province, and the data does show that. Any studies that you guys want, if you want links to, I'm happy to provide it, and I'll start. 5,600 people have committed suicide in 2018 in Canada. Students make up over 1,000 of those deaths. The same age group.
Mr.
You hit your mute button.
Sound.
You hit your mute button.
Oh,
Yeah.
did you guys hear what I was saying, or did it just?
No, it just muted and we couldn't hear.
Oh, when did should I to start from the beginning?
No,
after 1,000.
Yeah.
Okay, that's weird. I didn't touch anything. Okay, so 1,000 of these deaths were of students. So the same age group had less than 100 deaths due to COVID throughout the pandemic. Most of the deaths in students are people with comorbidities, be it obesity or underlying medical issues. The problem with virtual school is it exacerbates obesity. It discourages kids to stay healthy. And that doesn't just take a toll on how they are affected by COVID, but throughout their whole life. It is at a young age that they develop these habits. As I have personally seen, and many students have expressed, there has been a significant decline of physical and mental wellness throughout the pandemic, and lots of them cite virtual school as a main culprit of this. This is supported by current Canadian-wide studies, including McMaster Hospital in Hamilton, Ontario, which saw a 3 times increase in suicide-related hospitalizations. They correlated this to recent measures of virtual school and the social isolation that followed. This again is supported by Stat Canada, which reported a 64% decrease in mental health wellness during the pandemic. And to make this evidence even more established, yet another study corroborated the same data, showing that 70% of kids showed depressive symptoms, claiming a strong correlation between time and virtual learning and the symptoms. This is followed by them discussing parental stressors, which is a very, very big deal when it comes to these kids' development. Parental stress can affect how well they are participating in school. The parental stress, of course, parental stressors are caused by not only the kids showing more depressive symptoms, but by financial stress that is put upon them when they have to find someone to look after their child because they have to stay home. And for a 2-parent household, or even a 1-parent household, that could be like a 1-parent household, it's impossible for them to find that help. For a 2-parent household, it's still tough. It's super tough. And they need to find someone to watch them. And if it's a sibling, well, the sibling isn't getting the education that they need, or aren't doing the things in life that they need. We as a school division are sacrificing so much for the old, for the young, for the old. Let me rephrase that. We are sacrificing so much for the young to save the old. 5 Ontario pediatric clinics report over a 2 times increase in eating disorders in students during the pandemic. We talk about hospital capacity, but we never talk about the capacity for these therapists and these psychologists. More and more kids are waiting longer to see someone for mental health, sometimes waiting over a year to get an appointment, as shown in Ontario. The school board is responsible for the health of the students and staff, both physical and mental, and the students are overwhelmingly being sidelined for public health when they are put into virtual learning measures. Do you acknowledge that virtual school has negative effects, both mental and physical? And if so, why hasn't there been any gauge of how these students are doing during virtual school? This is a very radical way to stop COVID. And of course, there's going to be even more radical side effects. So why has this school not done the important work of finding how their students are doing during these measures? That's the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Brinkman. A motion is not required to receive presentations. Trustees, do you have any questions of Mr. Brinkman? Please raise your hand if you do. Trustee Shinkowski?
Yes. I'd like to thank you for coming out and doing your presentation. I noticed that you gave us the statistics, mostly of Ontario and other places. Did you do any research at all on Manitoba on this topic? Any?
The research in all other provinces were heavily correlated with virtual learning. As for Manitoba, I wasn't able to get any statistics. I tried to. The hospital said that they don't know how to get Manitoba specific statistics, but these studies do say that there's a correlation between it, especially since Ontario did have the strongest virtual school measures.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Chen?
Thank you, Mr. Brinkman. I'm always inspired by the students who come to give us a presentation, because this way we have direct communications. I have a question. When you mentioned engagement with students who enrolled in the virtual school, what type of engagement do you think would be the best? For example, a survey or a focus group, or some kind of a survey, or some kind of in-depth engagement, like would be the best to get feedback from our students? Thank you.
I think a survey that does not reveal their identity, but gives them the full choice to express how they feel, is a perfect way to gauge their well-being. The reason that I'm saying that is because I have seen this is unrelated. There's a drug use related survey that they gave me when I went to my former high school, and like in that way, it's secretive. You don't know their identity, and that'd be perfect for this. So they could express they can express themselves without feeling judged. And I think that's a really important thing, especially since you're not going face to face with someone, because it's really hard to be emotional without someone being in front of you. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Trustee Dumont?
Hello, thank you, Mr. Brinkman, and thank you so much for coming and presenting to us today. I was going to build a little bit on what Trustee Chen's question with regards to engaging with virtual students who are engaged in virtual learning. In addition to engaging with students, what are some other ways that you think school divisions could support students that are in virtual learning, whether it's optional or whether the province had directed that students are going? Are there any other things that you think from your experience doing virtual learning that would be good to support students?
Well, I'll start off that question with I've been in the optional Winnipeg School Division virtual school for since it started, and so I know a lot about how it works and all that. So to get to your question, I do not think that there is a good substitute for virtual learning when it comes to that. It's a lot more beneficial to have someone face to face, right? Because when you go to a school, you have your school counselor that you can talk to, and that personal relationship is really important, right? It's something that might take a year to build and fully trust that person. So I don't think that unless you're able to keep a connection between them and virtual school, I don't think that there's a proper substitute.
Thank you.
Trustee Broughton?
I echo my colleagues' thanks to you for coming and presenting to the board and sharing your concerns. And I guess my question builds off of both Trustee Chen and Trustee Dumont, in the sense that the provincial government has made it very clear to school divisions that we are to focus our work on education and not the delivery of healthcare. And supporting students' mental health is a function of healthcare. And so I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts on do you think that school divisions should in fact be interested in the whole child, including their health, in order to educate them? And B, if we were to do mental health focused engagement with students, do you think that that should be supported by experts in mental health, clinical type professionals that can support the work of understanding the mental health impacts that the pandemic itself and even remote learning is having on students?
Well, okay. First question. I think that the school division and healthcare are very intertwined in some way. I think that it is up to the personal child's doctor's decision, as I had to give a doctor's note for virtual school. I think that it should be up to the doctor and the child. The personal doctor knows best what's for the child. They've known the child for way longer than any other, so they know that their health personally. And could you repeat the second question? I don't remember it. I didn't catch it.
No problem. The second part of my question was focused on, do you think that student engagement or surveys or that sort of thing that is done in this educational environment should also have kind of that healthcare element to it, so a clinical professional involved in that understanding of mental health when looking at whether it's surveys or student engagement of some kind?
I think that obviously, I think a medical professional should be involved in the making of that survey. But other than that, I think the data would speak for itself. Any data that's given can be interpreted by anyone, I would think, because it'll show obviously a trend. I don't know how that survey would be formulated. Obviously, I'm not a medical professional. That's why I'm citing these studies. So, but I think that it would be important to have someone involved in that.
I thank you for your answer, and I want to repeat my thanks, and I think I can express the appreciation of my colleagues that we appreciate that it's not easy to come present to us, that it's nerve-wracking. You've done an excellent job, and I very much appreciate you sharing your voice with us today.
So I just have one question left, Ethan. We advertise on our website a lot of mental health supports for students. Do you think we're doing a good job of getting that information out to the students so they know where it is on our website? And do you think we should be tracking how many visits to it so we're getting a sense of what's going on? And like, how are we doing in ensuring that we're making sure that students know where that information is so they can browse it themselves and see if they want to phone a place? Like, are we doing a good job in getting that information out? Thank you.
That's a very good question. From my own experience and what I've heard, there's no good substitute to talking to a real person and being able to get real empathy from someone face to face. The mental supports do help, of course, but I do not think that anything is as good as having a counselor that is trained for that, that you have a personal relationship with. Again, personal development and personal relationships in schools is a very important part of a student's trust towards someone.
Okay, thank you for your answer. I'm not seeing any more questions. Thank you so much for taking the time and coming and getting your information together and doing a presentation. It is greatly appreciated. Seeing no more questions, I'm going to thank you very much for coming and talking to us about your concerns. Thank you.
No problem. And if any of you have questions, don't be afraid to email me. I can give you the links to all the studies, and yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions in my email.
Thank you. I believe Mr. Allard is here now. So I'd like to call upon Mr. Allard to begin his presentation to the board regarding COVID protocols. In accordance with procedural bylaw 1263, section 32.8, you shall be granted 10 minutes to make your presentation to the board. Go ahead, Mr. Allard. Oh, you're on mute.
Oh, wait. How's that? Is that better? Okay. I'm not a fan of technology. It took me about 5 or 6 tries to get into this meeting. I missed that gentleman that I guess he was a student speaking. I would have liked to hear him speak, but I wasn't in, so that would have been good to hear that. I'll just jump into it, I guess, since I'm limited with time. I wanted to address the COVID protocols and more specifically the letter that was sent from Betty on behalf of the trustees to school division or to the province. I last spoke here in September regarding mask exemptions and the overall masking policy on children. Since then, we've learned that face masks are a little more than just a fashion accessory, a facial decoration. This is according to many experts, including a CNN medical analyst, Leona Wen. She was on there talking about that. I see quite a few of you wearing masks here. It'd be nice if you guys were sitting in a restaurant, you'd be able to take them off. That'd be great. And we could see your faces. I sent over a podcast to the board. It was the Dr. Robert Malone's podcast with Joe Rogan. I hope you guys all had a chance to listen to that. Dr. Robert Malone is the inventor, creator of mRNA technology. This is the very vaccines that are being used on Manitobans and being mandated by you in August of last year on all staff. I would listen to what he has to say about that. He is a very solid expert in the field, being the inventor of the technology. And, regarding your letter saying we need to listen to the experts. So I think having more experts at the table are better than less. More better than less. More than, the more the better. I'm just reading some notes here. you make a point in the letter about these lockdown harms, but you're still pushing for more. You're pushing for code red, which doesn't make any sense. I mean, you can call it whatever you want, red, orange, yellow, blue. It invokes these harms to the children, and the gentleman that was just on spoke about mental health. I think I just caught a tail end of a question there, and our kids are suffering. They're walking around thinking they're a virus and they can kill grandma just by giving her a hug. They're being taught to avoid their friends. You know, I don't know if you remember back in, well, I'm sure you guys would. The late '80s, early '90s about the AIDS pandemic. There were people who you thought that you just go around somebody with AIDS and you can catch AIDS. We know that's wrong, but it took people decades to get over that. And there's still some people who think like that. And I think that's what we're doing right now with kids and COVID. And as educators and the trustees, we need to teach kids that their neighbors aren't dangerous. They aren't dangerous. Children aren't dangerous to their friends. You know, especially with COVID, children have never been shown to be the vectors of the disease. They've never been super spreaders, I guess. And, you know, we need to see their smiling faces. They need to see each other's smiling faces. There's nothing more gross than when I see a group of kids with masks on. And for what? To make adults feel better? We're using children as a human shield to make adults feel better. I think that's disgusting. I think it's gross. You know, they're not at danger. They never have been at danger of COVID-19. And now with Omicron, you know, in your letter, you say it's, you know, all over the place, but you also say it lives to find another host. This is great. This is what viruses do. Viruses evolve to be less fatal. They want to live. They want to evolve. If the host dies, the virus dies. So we're at the point where we just need to let kids be kids. I mean, adults should be adults too, but this is a school board meeting, and we're talking about kids. You mentioned about some staff members dying over the holidays, or you know, in the last little while. I believe there was 3 in Winnipeg 1. I know 2 of them were fully vaccinated. These vaccines, I don't know if the third one was, but the 2 of them for sure, these vaccines were mandated by you. If it was determined that these vaccines caused these people's deaths, is any one of you on the board willing to accept liability for their deaths? I hope. I don't know, but you're trying to push a 3rd dose of a vaccine that's not necessary. It could be causing harm. The 2 doses could have killed these people. We don't know. Why now do we have more deaths than we did before the vaccine with a supposedly less fatal virus? Maybe the vaccine needs to be looked at. Maybe we need to listen to people like Dr. Robert Malone or Dr. Joel Kettner, who used to be in Roos's shoes. I kind of went off script there, but we got to take a step back. What we've been doing for 2 years obviously isn't working. There's people still scared of a virus that's not really hurting anybody. Are people dying? Yes, that's been since the dawn of time. People die. Old, sick people die. That's not going to stop. But we're here talking about the children, and children are not at risk. The harms that we're causing with these masks, with these social distancings, with these school closures, with the cohorts, with the limited interactions with friends and teachers, this is creating mental health problems that we're going to be dealing with for decades. I think enough is enough. And, you know, another goof up, I guess, that happened, which isn't really the school division, but the Manitoba Teacher Society, they deleted comments on their social media about children calling out for help. Children were posting that they were suicidal, that they wanted to hurt themselves, that they don't want to go to remote learning. And the Manitoba Teacher Society deleted those comments and shut off commenting. That's gross. I know it's not, I mean, the Manitoba Teacher Society, they work hand in hand. I mean, you know, with the schools, with public health, with everything. I think it's gross to silence children. But we need to listen to them. I hope you don't, you know, by writing this letter, you've basically, you've made a great argument for Bill 64, which was quashed. You're asking the government to take over. I think that's what Bill 64 was to do, was to eliminate these school boards and these trustees positions. We need to take, Winnipeg School Division #1 can set an example and get these kids back to normal, get these teachers back to normal. Let's let this virus do what it's going to do. It's not deadly unless you listen to the TV. But we're only listening to the experts that get airtime. So I suggest you listen to that Dr. Robert Malone and even Dr. Kettner. And maybe you might have a different opinion on it, a different outlook on what's happening and how we can get these kids back to normal. I've never stopped hugging my loved ones. Neither have my kids. I hope you guys don't either. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Allard, for presenting to the Board of Trustees. A motion's not required to receive this information. Trustees, do you have any questions of Mr. Allard? Is there any questions? So if there are no questions, thank you very much, Mr. Allard, for making your presentation.
Thanks a lot. I don't know if this is the proper avenue for what I've done, but I needed to make my opinions heard, and I guess this is the way to do it. I don't know.
Yeah. And if you want to hear that the student who is presenting this is going to be recorded, so you can listen to what he says in the recording.
Find it somewhere online, I guess YouTube or whatever.
Yeah,
okay.
It'll be online. Okay.
Thanks again.
You. Thank you. Moving on, of reading and confirming of minutes. Moved by Trustee Reed, seconded by Trustee Shinkowski, that the minutes dated December 20th, 2021 be approved as distributed. All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Reading of communications and petitions, moved by Trustee Broughton, seconded by Trustee Reed, that OC 01-22 from Cliff Cullen, Minister of Education, providing the Winnipeg School Division with a grant of $1.06 million to support the 2021-2022 participation of its 13 designated schools in Manitoba Education's Community Schools program be received as information. All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Moved by Trustee Broughton, seconded by Trustee Chen, that OC 02-22 from Marvin Rotrand, National Director, League for Human Rights of B'nai B'rith, Canada, requesting the Winnipeg School Division to declare the month of May as Jewish Heritage Month be referred to Governance and Public Relations Committee for review. All those in favor?
I'd like to make a comment, Chair.
Sure.
The board adopted a practice coming from my motion related to the Heritage Month to recognize the Heritage Month within the Winnipeg School Division, and February will be the Black History Month. I will start to recognize, and I look forward, this year I look forward to all the Heritage Months that we will recognize, and I hope our students have access to celebrate their culture and diversity at our schools, and I look forward to add Jewish Heritage Month into our recognition when it is appropriate.
Okay, thank you. So you're not opposed to moving it to the committee or to the Governance and Public Relations? Are you opposed to moving it to that committee?
I support to move it into the committee for review.
Okay, so though all in favor, any opposed? Carried. Agenda information, moved by Trustee Shinkowski, seconded by Trustee Chen, that Information Correspondence IC01-22 be received as information. Is there any discussion on it? All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Business matters as defined in Rule 44.7, moved by Trustee Reed, seconded by Trustee Dumont, that the board move into business matters as defined in Rule 44.7, carried.
Madam Chair, I would like to report on the following. I move that Trustee Dumont be nominated as a member to the Inclusive Education Advisory Committee.
Can I get a seconder, please? Trustee Shinkowski. All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
I also move that the support staff named in the confidential memorandum from the Chief Superintendent dated January 17th, 2022 be submitted to the Manitoba School Boards Association for consideration for the MSBA President's Council Award.
Can I get a seconder, please? Trustee Chen. All those in favor? Any opposed? Can I get all those in favor again, please? Any opposed? Carried.
Further move that the Indigenous People Land Acknowledgement be revised as follows. In recognition of our commitment to embrace and honor the significant contributions that Indigenous people made in the development of Canada, students, families, and members of our community will acknowledge that our schools and administrative buildings are located on Treaty 1 land, the traditional lands of the First Nations people, as well as the traditional homeland of the Red River Métis Nation.
Can I get a seconder, please? Trustee Reed. All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
The members of the board received an update on the WSD WTA Joint Committee meeting, COVID-19, leaves of absence, suspension reports, and River Heights Library. At 8:20 p.m., the board moved into closed camera with Chief Superintendent, Secretary Treasurer, Director Human Resources, and Board and Community Liaison Officers to discuss Public Schools Act Section 39.8. I would like to move that this item, Public Schools Act Section 39.8, be tabled to the following board meeting.
Can I get a seconder, please? Trustee Reed. All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Moved by Trustee Reed that the meeting be adjourned. All in favor? Carried. Good evening, everyone.
Good night, everybody.